Welcome, everybody. Thank you for viewing and listening to the L&C podcast all these years. It means a lot to me and Lorenzo, even though Lorenzo's not here again. Yes, I'm throwing him under the bus. He has a life. He has a job, working weird hours. I totally get it. And I'm the guy who runs everything. So, it's easier for me to just kind of get up and do these on a whim. Easier for me than it is for him. But we did plan this because we have a guest this episode. I'm really excited to introduce them in a moment here. But I do want to say, please subscribe to the podcast, like the episode, and share this episode as far as you can. Please post it everywhere. Share it to your friends and family. I think this episode's going to be one that a lot of people can get a positive takeaway from for once, because we're usually talking to comedians and degenerates and people who probably should not be on camera. But this lady is more than qualified. In fact, she is an author, so I feel underqualified. I feel like a poser getting such a delightful opportunity to interview her. But I've been listening to her stuff, and I'm really pleased to introduce to the L&C podcast. Please help me in welcoming Rhoda Banks to the show. How is it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be
here. Yay! I'm so happy that we set this up and figured it out. So, like I said at the intro here, you're an author. Is that how you would describe yourself primarily, or would you describe yourself more as a wellness coach or a life coach? How would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself more as a storyteller, a speaker, a mentor, a coach. And if you got to know me and others that got to know me, they usually call it the Rhoda experience. So that's really the umbrella of everything that I do is centered under the Rhoda experience, because I'm very passionate about people and giving them an experience that they can remember.
That's fantastic. I mean, a lot of people, when you think about somebody having an experience named after them, that's a bad thing. Is that fair to say? Like, oh, she's an experience, or she's a whole thing. But your experience is nothing but a delight. Like, I can see that in just even the way you dress and your smile, your presence, your aura is welcoming and wholesome, and that's lovely.
Thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah, it's the opposite of that. It's the opposite of the bad experience. It's really a positive experience. Again, as I stated, we remember negative and positive, but I'm very intentional. Like, what do I want people to remember and say about Rhoda after having had an experience with them? And the answer to that is usually the motivation of how I interact with others.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, like, you want to put your best foot forward. First impressions are always a big deciding factor in how people view you and decide to interact with you going forward. So I think we're similar in that way. I always try to set a great and lasting first impression. So when I messed this entire episode up somehow by some fluke, like I've done for some other guests, I can only expect that it'll crash and burn, that I would have set a bad foot forward. But no, I think this is going to go really well. Yeah, I do this every episode. I always undercut my capability. Do you ever find people, you find people in their life do that? They always sell themselves short and, second guess. And, do you deal with that a lot in your work?
I do. And you could benefit actually from being around me a little bit more, because I've heard you a couple of times now admit that you have imposter syndrome, which is okay to admit, but you don't have to have it, because we both are human. So we're on equal playing field here. And so you don't have to second guess yourself. And the other thing I've heard you put yourself down is if you're not qualified to be talking to me, when in fact you are more than qualified to be talking to me. You've been doing this podcast per our discussion, for before COVID or right at COVID, that's 5 years now. Like, you got a lot of experience under your belt. So tell yourself a different story, the opposite of that.
Aw.
Tell yourself what you would be telling someone else if you were trying to encourage and inspire them.
Thank you so much. And that's really why I want people to share this episode, is because I want them to share you talking so nicely about me. And I want people to know that it's coming from a professional assessment that I am good at what I do. So thank you. We can end the episode, I think, 6 minutes? I'm kidding. Kidding, of course. No, that is really nice of you to say. And I do the same thing for other people. I'm always trying to gas people up and make them realize, just how good they are at what they do and how they belong in doing what they love. But I find it's much harder to center that same self-respect and energy back home, back where, where it really matters, because you're not going to be, it's like being on an airplane when the oxygen masks come down, make sure you set yourself up before you go around helping everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I still need to walk what I talk more often than not. So there's so much we could get into. I wonder where to start. I think we should just start with your book that you're going around promoting, because that's a huge step, is becoming an author and becoming somebody who's telling stories that leave a true and lasting impact as far as they can reach. Once you put something on paper, that's international, that's worldwide. So how does it feel, and what inspired this part of your journey here?
So how does it feel? First of all, the name of the book is Daughter of an Assassin. And it's a turning pain into power. It's a journey of faith and perseverance. So it is my memoir. So when you read and hear the title, people be like, is that a true story? It absolutely is a true story. And how does it feel? I said this another time someone asked that. I feel very naked. Like,
really?
I am very raw.
Vulnerable, right.
The stories are raw and real, open. But that's just who I am. I'm a very transparent person. Number two, it feels healing, a sense of healing, because when I wrote it all out and got it all down in the book, I feel like something lifted up off of me, and like I can step away from the past and really just live into and lean into and enjoy the moment. And I no longer have to think about all the hurtful things. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 100% healed from the traumas that I've experienced, but it was quite the healing journey. Which leads to the other question you asked, was why? What inspired me to write the book? Multiple points. One, it sort of was a healing process for me to be able to write. The other one was I'm really big on reach one, help one. My biggest inspiration behind this to share my story was just if I could just help one person, help them heal, help them rise or feel seen, then my story was worth telling. The other thing is my lived experiences as in leadership, as a leader in corporate America. In addition to while I'm navigating corporate America, I'm living out true trauma that I'm experiencing in my real life, but I'm also going through some triumphs and everything in between. So writing became a way to turn my lived experiences into leadership lessons that others can learn from. I also have 2 sons. And so writing the book was for my 2 sons and future generations. I wanted them to know the truth about where I came from, what made Rhoda,
right,
and who I chose to become in spite of all the things that I've endured and had to overcome.
That's remarkable, because it's a gift to them as much as it is to all of the, people who don't know you directly. This is just as useful of a tool for your family and for, like you said, your sons. That's incredible. I don't know what I would do if my mom ever wrote a book about her. You don't bring up your sons in the book, do you?
I do talk about mainly my oldest son. And the reason why he's brought up in the book is because his choices in life were part of some trauma that I experienced as a mom and a parent, and the decisions he's made has led to some very hurtful moments for me as a mother. And when he hasn't gotten to read it because his choices led him to where he's at today, which is in prison, and I can't send the book there unless it comes to a certain provider.
Right.
And so when he gets out and next year, he'll get the opportunity to read it. But I think he's at a place in his life where he's more mature, and he's gone through a lot of therapy himself. He will understand that and probably receive it too and learn from reading it.
Well, that's good. That's good. But still, would you have liked to have been able to get his permission? I wonder, just as if it was possible, did that cross your mind of like, maybe?
Yeah, it didn't, because the way I tell the story is my lived experience.
Right.
So I'm telling from my lens versus his. And so I didn't really feel like I needed his permission.
Yeah. You earned it.
He might feel that. Had he not made those choices, I wouldn't have had to write it.
Right, right. No, I mean, it'll be like that. It will. I mean, my family, there's not a lot of history of incarceration, but I do have at least one family member who's been in and out of jail their whole life, and I can see the impact that it has on his mom, my grandmother. This is one of my uncles I'm talking about. He's been on the podcast before, but it has a ripple effect when somebody so promising, takes a turn for the worse, given any number of circumstances. But when they stumble that hard, I can imagine being able to tell your side unabridged in such an eloquent format that will be healing regardless of anybody's gripes or complaints about the the material itself. I don't mean to assume that he would take it poorly, but I know if my grandma wrote a book about her son and if it involved him effing up, he'd probably have something to say about that. None too kindly, but so do you have a good relationship with your two sons? So the oldest one is the one that makes it into the book here, but is your youngest one still around, and do they support your work?
Yeah, my oldest son, I talk to him quite often, maybe twice a week, and then my youngest son earned a football scholarship. He just finished his junior year. He's now at Emporia University, Division II. He started at Division I at Southern Illinois, Carbondale, but he transferred hoping that he can get more playing time at the D2 level. And he has been a non-issue kid, like very compliant, smart, honor roll student, being a football athlete and on the honor roll. I told him, I said, his name is Jalen. I said, Jalen, that's a big deal. He's so like introverted and nonchalant. He acts like it's not a big deal, but it really is.
Yeah.
And we're very proud of him, and I think he works really hard at trying to make us proud because of the things he's witnessed from his older brother and the things that we've gone through. He's actually told me that the coaches asked him why is he so passionate about this sport and why does he want to be successful. And he said that he told them because his parents have two sons and they've not had one to be successful yet, and he wants to be that one.
Wow.
Which I thought that was very kind and empathetic, but also he put a lot of pressure on himself.
Yes, no, it is great that he would credit you and say that he wants to make you proud, but I'm sure you're not really a therapist, but you have a really rich background in talking in and around the subject. You can see how that's, like you said, that's a lot of pressure on a kid to need to live up to that expectation. So, but I'm glad he seems to be handling it well and succeeding, right? But I'm sure you probably remind him all the time. You're like, hey, you ease up a little bit. We are proud of you, but don't burn yourself out, or burn the candle at both ends trying to impress us.
Because we're already proud of him.
Good.
That's what I tell him. Mm-hmm.
Good. And if you stop being proud, let them know there's a sequel to the book coming.
Yes. Part 2.
Well, that's excellent to hear. Now, how old are they each?
My oldest son is 33 and my youngest is 21.
Okay, wow. So that's a pretty significant gap there.
12 years. I talk about that in the book too.
Now, just the quick summary. What would you say was the reason for the gap, and how did it impact the way you were able to raise both of them?
Right, that's a great question, because of that gap came maturity for me and my husband. So when you have your first child, you don't know what you don't know. We use it, and that's really at the core message of the book. It's about parenting patterns and the impact that our parents' choices have on the kids,
right?
And how if unresolved trauma that our parents had, if it goes unresolved, if it's never addressed, never talked about, you tend to repeat it. And so someone asked me, Rhoda, what parenting pattern did you take from your mother and carried it forward? And when it came to my oldest son, which is named after my husband, James, we call my oldest son Lil James. When it comes to Lil James, the pattern that I took from my mother was yelling. Like when I couldn't get him to do what I wanted him to do, yell or threaten him when he became a certain age. If he didn't follow our rules, we were going to put him out. Right. Well, he called my bluff on that, and he ended up leaving at a young age, which led to some bad choices around the wrong people, ended up on drugs, etc. Yeah. And then with my youngest son, by the time we started experiencing these things with Lil James, I had a different way about parenting, because I too had gone through counseling and therapy on how to parent Lil James. I had to learn how to give him freedom and let him go. He still made bad choices, but he's still in the land of the living, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
But when it came to Jalen, I learned that he could have a voice and should have a voice. So growing up, when we used to try to voice how we felt as kids, we would get in trouble. Like my mom we didn't have a voice. But I allowed Jalen to share and express his feelings and emotions. Number 2, when I would yell, he would calmly say to me, "Why are you yelling?" And he would be so calm about it that I would pause myself and ask the same question. Why am I yelling? So his questioning allowed me, it kind of like raised it to my awareness and forced me to be more mindful and intentional about that. And so I practiced being more positive with him, saying positive, speaking positive words of affirmation over him. Things that I didn't do as much as I wish I had with my oldest son, and that no one did with me growing up.
Right.
I did that with Jalen, and they seemed like in the gap. It seemed like I had 2 only kids. Like the age gap was so drastic. So it felt like I was starting over when I found out I was having Jalen. But then looking at that through a positive lens, I said, the Lord gave him to me. He chose us for Jalen to be a family, for Jalen to be born into, and he has a purpose for being here. I say this every time I talk to someone around being born. If you Google it, it's a 1 in 400 trillion chance of being born. So if you are born and on earth, you have a purpose.
Right.
And so I started to look at that from a very positive place. I was like, it's a reason he's here. It's a purpose. and I was chosen to be his mom for a reason. So that's how I looked at that. But it was like raising two only kids.
I believe it. I believe it, and I'm sure in the book, I'm sure you, once you start to talk about Lil James, you start to get into the things that your upbringing sort of influenced, right, for better or worse. I wonder though, because you don't mention Jalen in the book, right? That's correct. I wonder if
I mentioned about him being born, but I don't go into a lot of detail on him specifically.
I wonder, and this is a pretty charged word, so forgive me, but I wonder if there's any regret that you've experienced in the way that you were able to so, I guess, quote unquote, successfully raise Jalen, compared to how, you know, you feel like you may have fallen short given that you weren't equipped with the tools you had with the first time around, so to speak. Is that something you've experienced?
That's the word I use to describe it. Like, I regret being so hard on. I felt like I was hard on Lil James. Not to excuse he had the same opportunities that Jalen had. 2-parent household.
Right.
The Lord had, by that time, my career had taken off. So he had the same
resources.
Options, and the support system and everything. But our relationship could have been better. And had I been more aware of how what I had gone through, how it was impacting how I was raising him and pouring into him. So yeah, I do regret that, because I feel like we're getting closer now, but look at all the time that has passed, and look at all the hardship he has had to go through, and then look at all the hurt that I had to endure as a mom.
But, and I'm sure this is all sort of part of self-discovery as you write the book and as you have undergone therapy, you start to realize and understand that children, yes, while you are in charge of them and, you know, there for their safekeeping and to teach them how to come into this world, they are individuals. They're their own person. And once they get to a certain age, part of letting them go is what sets them up for success and what sets them up for, I guess, the real world, so to speak. And that no matter what you do, eventually it's their life and it's your life, and you're no longer, you know, in charge of it, right? So part of letting go of them too, I'm sure, has been letting go of a lot of that regret too, as hard as that is, right?
True.
You know, because
it was one of the hardest things I've had to do. Was to let go and trust that no matter where Lil James was in the world, that he will be taken care of. And so far, that's been the case.
Good. Well, that's great to hear, and I'm sure it's never as easy as we make it sound with big things like that. I'm not a parent. I'm a son. I'm 25. I asked about the age gap between your kids because I have a younger brother who's about to be a senior in high school, and I'm 25, so he's 17. So there's a little bit of a gap in my relationship to him as well, but where I didn't necessarily fall as hard as James might have. I know my brother can see the way I've come up, as, you know, he sees the example of what not to do and, you know, what to do. And I think for better or worse, he's making more of the right decisions. And that's really cool to see. And my mom too. And, you know, I was going to ask you about, so you talk to your older son still. Does he give you grief about the way you treat Jalen versus him at all, or is he really supportive of that?
He's very supportive. Like, we hadn't heard from Lil James in probably 5 years. We just heard from him. Started back hearing from him in September. He called on Jalen's birthday. And he remembered that it was Jalen's birthday, and he said, It's mom, it's today my little brother's birthday, and you can hear when he says little brother, like you can hear the pride in
Yeah.
his voice. But he gets to talk to Jalen and learn about him because Jalen, Lil James has been gone ever since Jalen was probably like 7.
Oh my
So he
gosh.
lives in a
Yeah.
whole other state. Right? He lives in Arizona, and we're in St. Louis. So yeah, he hasn't. I'm sure he's dealt with that though. I think that
Hmm.
I could tell that was part of his issue was when Jalen was born. He felt like the second hand, and he ran away at one point when he was younger because he was jealous of his little brother. And I got him counseling while he was growing up and trying to deal with this as well for that.
Hmm.
But again, to your point, no matter what you do as a parent, the foundation you set, etc., everyone as individuals have their own choices to make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's a tough thing to have to reconcile somebody that you know, in no small part, you brought them into this world. You feel like this added responsibility of running the show or of making sure they succeed, but it's the letting go that sometimes causes the biggest rift because a lot of people will just refuse to. And as they become into themselves, as they become the individual that they're going to be in life, the parents' input stops mattering at a certain point,
Right.
you know, and it only starts to drive them away and drive them out.
Right.
You know, I see that happen with my little brother. I see, like, in the same way it happened with me at times where, you know, my mom's input is less and less welcome, and you know, you talk about it as like, you know, troubling teens, or, you know, there's a period in every kid's life where they start to act out and they start to, you know, their parents aren't cool anymore. But, you know, as I see it and, you know, put on kind of like the hindsight glasses, I can see, like, I was like that at some point. I can't believe I ever talked to her that way, or, you know, like
we all were. Yeah.
But what we all weren't was in a household like the one you grew up in.
Right.
And that's what the book is primarily about. Yes.
Yes. So, Daughter of an Assassin. So let's talk a little bit about the title.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is well known in St. Louis, Missouri. There's a few documentaries out there on a gang that he was part of in the 60s and 70s. He was like the right-hand person to the leader of this group, and he was the assassin. He really was. He did 4 years in the military. When he got out, he was a trained marksman in the military. When he got out, he was part of Vietnam. He wasn't right mentally, but he was part of this group. And in the community I grew up in, low-income housing project in St. Louis, Missouri, they were known for killing, drugs, all kind of things. So my mother, I grew up with her telling me, don't tell people who your dad is.
Wow.
And I didn't understand why as a kid. So I would always say, Earl Jr., my dad. Earl Jr., my dad. And people would be like, Earl Jr., your dad?
Uh-huh.
And they would look at me and they'd be like, girl, he was something else. And I remember working, had a summer job, and it came up in front of my supervisor. And I was like, yeah, Earl Jr., my dad. And he looked at me and he said, you look just like that. And he said the N-word. Wow. And he did. And so later that he then said he killed my brother. And I was 14, so my response was always the same when someone would tell, because believe it or not, a lot of people would say, he killed my son, he killed this, he did that.
Oh my gosh.
I would always respond, well, I was 5 when he was killed, and I don't remember him. And so later that day, he told me and my friend we can leave work early. And we 14, so we was like, okay. Yeah. So we left, and the next day when we got back, he called us in the office with his boss, and he fired us for leaving the job site early. And I cried. I said, you said we can leave early. He said, no, I did not. And I insisted, and I kept saying, you said we can leave early. And I was crying, and he's like, I did not. And I went home and told my mom. She said, Rhoda, I told you got to stop telling people who your dad is, because people hold grudges again, I still didn't get it until I was like in my 20s. And I thought back. I say, oh, he couldn't stand to look at me.
Right.
Because I reminded him of my dad who had killed his brother. That makes sense. It wasn't right that he would take it out on a kid, but I get it. So a literal assassin. So living under his shadow. There's been a contract put out on my life as a kid based on the action he had taken.
Mm-hmm.
Not gonna give all that away. It's in the book, but the book isn't about him. The book is about me having to live under handed that legacy that I didn't choose. And in addition to that, the theoretical assassin was really my mother. So she's a whole character in the book that's very prominent person in my life. She's since passed on, but her demons is really what I struggled with. Because, see, my dad was killed when I was 5, so he didn't have a big major, physically wasn't present, but his legacy was.
Right.
But my mom choices and her, I believe she had mental illness that was unresolved and untreated. Her decision making, her parenting is really what you learn about in the book through my stories. An average person, it would have broken.
Mm-hmm.
They would have given up. Now, believe me, I've had to overcome thoughts of suicide, not feeling loved, all of that. And I still struggle with those negative stories I tell myself because of the things I went through under her. And then after coming out of her house and the things that I endured from her after I had moved away and got married, she was still like very prominent. And then my own life situations and trauma. That's what the book is about. So at the essence of it, it is about parenting and patterns of it and unresolved trauma, but it's a good story. It's a good news story in the end, because here I am talking to you, right?
Yes.
It's about resilience. It's about overcoming. It's about not allowing what you're born into, the circumstances you're giving, to dictate the end. Like, you get to choose what you want your story to be. Mm-hmm. And that's what the message is in the book.
That's so positive in the end. And I was wondering how you were going to, bring it there, because the whole time I'm like, man, goodness gracious. I wonder too if, so it's mainly about how your mother raises you and how she's in and out of your life constantly at every point, it seems. How has that, how have you looked at that and the way she treated you all throughout, adulthood, it sounds like, and how have you then, taken your different approach in comparison? Like, how did that inform your new approach?
Yeah, so what it did for me regarding my relationship and perspective of her is I looked at her through a lens of empathy. Mm-hmm. And
you mentioned you think she was not diagnosed with something, so you're even looking at it from a mental health perspective too.
Mental health, I'm very close with my grandmother. My grandmother is still living, and she's the other character in the book. I learned why my mother was the way she was because my grandmother's lifestyle early on, alcoholism, men in and out. She didn't really take care of my mother, and she had 2 brothers, which are my uncles, and she was made to feel ashamed by not having, being upkept with a hair comb, with clean clothes. Like, they went through a lot. It's what she shared with me and what one of my uncles shared with me. And they were made fun of for it. So my mother, I used to wonder, why does she hate my grandmother so much? Like, they ended up living together at the end of my mom's life because my grandmother had to help take care of my mom because she ended up with lung cancer. Even through her sickness, you could tell that she really struggled with my grandmother. But yet, when she was taking her last breath, she was calling for her mom.
Wow.
And so what I want to say about that is just because I went through those things, and we never call our mom. We call her Dorothy. She wouldn't allow us to call her mama. We called her by her first name. We called our grandmother mama. And what I want to say is, I have no ill will towards my mother. In fact, I love her deeply. I was there with her through her sickness. I took her to all her chemo treatments. I helped her financially because she wasn't able to work. I paid her rent. I cooked. I was there changing her when she couldn't get up out the bed and bathe. I was there when she took her last breath. Despite all the things she took me through and that I endured with her, and I loved her unconditionally. And someone said, well, how did you forgive her? I didn't really feel like I had to forgive her. When you're living in it, it doesn't seem abnormal. Mm-hmm. That's your norm.
That's your life.
You don't know any different until you're outside of that. And so I truly forgave. There was nothing to forgive. I just loved. Unconditional love, mm-hmm. because she's my mom. And when she was dying, I felt the hurt of her pulling away. Like 2 days before she passed on an Easter Sunday morning. I could feel, I didn't even know this existed. I call it was a void, but it felt like someone was pulling away the invisible umbilical cord. Mm. And I was like, I didn't even know that connection was still there. But when you think about it, we all are connected to our moms when we're born through the umbilical cord. It's cut physically. It's really still there until they depart one of us depart this earth. And it really hurt it. It really hurt it. How did that impact my parenting going forward? As I stated, I learned from my experience with Lil James that I had a little bit of Dorothy in me with all the yelling and the threatening and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I learned that with Jalen, that wasn't necessary. I could change that pattern, and I don't have to be that harsh. He can have a voice. We can have a conversation, a two-way conversation versus a one-way. And that it felt much easier to parent that way. It really did feel much easier to parent that way. And now that I talk to Lil James, I'm using some of that same way that I interact with Jalen. I get to use it with Lil James, even though he's older now.
Right.
He does need advice because he's going to come back into society once he's released, and he needs a plan. And so I've talked to him about what is your plan going to be, because you can't come back here.
Right.
And so he's taking a culinary course in the prison system. He's got his barber's license. I say, You need to be talking to them about housing, because he's on medication because he was diagnosed with bipolar. How are you going to get your meds? Because if he's not medicated, he'll end up right back there. Mm-hmm. So that's how the Dorothy experience has impacted the Rhoda experience.
And the Rhoda experience outshines all, it seems. Right. You're a force of nature. That's what I call people who, when you meet them and even when you see them at a distance, you can tell this is somebody to be reckoned with, because they mean business. They're here to do what they need to do, and nothing is going to stop that. Right.
And so you picked that up right away. Look, I just told somebody there is not one scenario that I could think of that will stop me from fulfilling the purpose that I believe God has for me. And that is, number one, to help others to reach their full potential. I'm all about other people.
That's wonderful.
And that is what fills my cup. So whatever it takes to help them win, that's what I'm about doing.
I want to kind of launch into something based off, use that as a jumping off point. You like helping people, you like helping them reach their full potential, but at what point do you hand it off to that person and step back? I'm curious to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. You talking about you wasn't qualified to interview me. These questions you asked me are not easy.
I'm not even going through what I prepared. I'm worried we're not going to have time, but I am genuinely curious because it seems like you work with a lot of people as a coach. when do you have to say, okay, something's not clicking, or you have I've done everything I can. Now you as the individual, you need to take this and apply it when and how you can. When do you make that decision?
Yeah. So it really depends on the person. So you meet people where they are. But to the point you just asked, there is a distinction between helping people win or enabling them. And I can tell you that I've been guilty of both because I can overhelp. So I've had people, one person comes to mind who I adored greatly and really wanted to see them get there, but they couldn't get there. And so you have to assess, is there a will to get there? Do they want it?
Right.
And is there a skill? Meaning, do they have the ability to get there? So somebody can have the desire, but don't have the capability. So I have to assess that over time if they're lacking the capability, and that's when I have to cut it off. If they have the capability and don't have the will or the desire, I just exit scene because there's no need for me to try to pour it to somebody that's not interested. But if they have the will, which is the desire, and the ability, the skill, then I'm willing to give whatever it takes to help them win.
Or else, otherwise, you're investing in a lemon or somebody or something that's not ever going to rise to the occasion, right? Just because. I
have a story that really,
please,
is one of my claims to fame. So it's the story of Corman. Corman applied. I had got this job at this large healthcare system, and I was being brought on to build the training program for their electronic health record implementation. It was a huge project, $350 million project, and I only had 6 months to get the program built and off and going. I needed an admin. That was the first role I filled. Corman applied. She worked within the organization. So when she applied, it was a lateral move, meaning it would not have been more money or promotion for her.
No bonus, nothing.
Right. When we offered her the job, she was apprehensive because she wasn't going to get any more money. So she said she called around to the places I used to work in St. Louis. A lot of people know Rhoda. And so when she said Rhoda Banks, they was like, oh, my God, you get to work with Rhoda. You should take this job.
Okay, good.
She takes the job. She's an admin. So she's the lowest level within my department. I didn't even know I was doing this. It just came natural. I started growing, developing Corman, encouraged her to go back to school. She graduated with her bachelor's. And then I promoted her to be a trainer. Then I promoted her to be a senior trainer. And all this time I'm coaching, mentoring, developing her. She goes on. Eventually she was like, Rhoda, I hate to do this, but I want to apply for this other position that was outside of my department that would have set her up for even more success. I was like, girl, no problem. I'll write you a recommendation letter. I wrote her a recommendation letter. She gets the job. She gets all this experience, all the certifications needed, and she goes off and starts consulting. I remember her first consulting gig, she was in Hawaii. She called me crying. She was homesick. And I talked her through all of that. I just met her for dinner. Now, this was in 2007. I just met her for dinner the other week. We still have this mentoring relationship, more of a friendship now, but still a mentor. So the other month, about 2 months ago, she called and she said, Rhoda, are you available on whatever Saturday morning at 10 o'clock to come to some event? I didn't even know what it was. I just said yes.
Right.
And so I go to the hotel. It was in a conference room, and I found out it was a women's conference.
Oh.
She was a speaker. When I tell you, she's an entrepreneur. She does well. She makes a lot of money. She's an influencer. She mentors other women. She really paid it forward. And throughout the years, she's constantly told me my family wouldn't be in the position we're in if it wasn't for you. And I always say, oh, it's not me. You did it. And she was like, nope, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So I go to the event. she gets up to speak, and I'm still wondering, I wonder why she invited me. Oh, she need me to be in the audience to support her. Well, she's telling this story. She starts off her talk with like she's on a cell phone, and like she's talking to someone, and she said, "Did you see what Lisa had on? Girl, why she wear those shoes?" And then she hung up the phone and she asked the audience, "Why do we do that? Why do we put women down?" She said, "Let me tell you a story." So the story she told was she worked for this African American leader. At the time, I didn't know she was talking about me. Nobody in the room knew me, so they didn't know that she was talking about me. She said, and she bought this outfit for her birthday, and she wore this outfit to work that Monday for her birthday, and it was lime green. And she said she even had on lime green eyeshadow. And she said when she got to work, she was like, "I know Rhoda go say," but she didn't say my name. "I know my leader go say, I look cute." And she said when the leader walked in, the leader said, "Good morning," and didn't say nothing about her outfit. And she was like, "Oh, she must didn't see me." So she goes to the leader office. The leader still didn't acknowledge her outfit. So later on, she was in the leader's office, and the leader said, "You look cute for a weekend." And she said, "She looked," and the leader sat her down and said, "Let me explain." She said, and the leader told her, "You dress for where you want to be, not for where you're at. You want to be taken seriously."
Right.
And she was talking about me, and this is true. I told her in that moment, because I remember her saying, "Well, I want to be able to do that." And I said, "Well, I'm going to take you shopping. But I'm broke. I really have no money." So I had promised to take her shopping. It just came out of me in that moment.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell her this, but I had like 3 credit cards, and I called each credit card to see how much available credit I had. And I had a little bit on each one. And I took her to lunch, and then we went shopping, and I picked out, it wasn't one outfit, it maybe was 5. And I was teaching her how to dress. And she said she said it was life-changing for her. She said, but it wasn't about the clothes. She said it was about the fact that you cared enough to do that for me. She said nobody had ever done that.
Yes.
And it changed her life. Like, she stayed with me, learned as much as she could, got her education, went out and did big things and still doing big things. And to this day, we still meet probably every 6 months and have a dinner. She gets advice. We talk about things. She gives me an update the next time we meet. But in that moment at that event, she shared that story, and she said, "I want to give her her flowers," and she's here today. So the room didn't know me. So when she pointed me out, everybody started clapping, and she gave me flowers. And that's how I started my Saturday. That Saturday.
Wow.
And I had no idea that's why I was there. It was just so special. That's one of many stories of what I do. And the reason why I do it is just pure. Like, I just want to see people win. And that's somebody that I would just pour into because she was eating it up, and she really wants to grow, and she still seeks advice to this day.
Oh.
And there's others that I've done the same thing for that I've never got a thank you from, but that's okay because that's not why I did it.
Right.
And there's others that show up when I need them to. Like, I just had my book launch. The room was full. I spoke at a event, a women's storytelling event called That's What She Said. And I had 40 guests in the audience. It was an audience of 600 people. It was 10 women that were part of this cast. I was one of them, and I had 40 guests in the audience that were there just to see me.
Wow.
And it was people who have worked for me over the years and that I've mentored and coached, and so that's what it's about.
Yes. I see. Here I am. I can't even get 10 people to come to a comedy show of mine. I'm in an empty restaurant. That's so. You know what they say: a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And and for you to be that. You're that constant gravitational force that's creating the ebb and the flow and moving that tide. That's got to be a remarkable and fulfilling task that you carry out.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, when I die, when my work is finished on Earth, I don't want people saying, "Oh, she was the best executive head of culture and inclusion at American Ad Credit," or wherever I'm at the time. That's not what I want them saying.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing beyond your 9 to 5? Is really the question you should be asking yourself. Because I think we all have a purpose, and it's not just to sit behind a desk and help another company be successful. We have a purpose, a legacy we need to be leaving here on Earth and making it a better place than it was when we got here.
Yes.
And I truly believe that. And so
I think to kind of relate myself to what you do, for a while I had just been clocking in, clocking out of jobs, making ends meet, barely scraping by. And, I would get home, and I still do a lot of the time. I'll get home and I'll just, laze out. I'll put on HBO or Netflix or whatever. I'll play some video games, but that was so draining and so mundane. And I feel like life is almost designed to keep you in that rut and to keep you complacent, to keep you, in your routine. But once you take even a couple steps outside of that, once you leave your comfort zone, and that doesn't mean going out doing a bunch of drugs or skydiving the next day. That's not what getting out of your comfort zone could be. Just trying one simple new thing. If it's something you've always wanted to do, if it's something you've always looked at and said, that looks hard, I don't know where to begin. Just starting that, for me, that was stand-up comedy. And that was, let's get up on this, stage at this bar and try to make a couple people laugh and see what happens. And taking that small leap of faith, and it's paid in dividends. I've met so many delightful people. I wouldn't be talking to you if I hadn't met a mutual friend of ours, Joe Bacino, through stand-up comedy. The networking alone has been just an outstanding upgrade to my business as usual, because I'll still go to work. I still had to work a full shift today and drive all the way back here. And it's tempting just to say, hey, can we call this off? I just want to watch Netflix and go to bed. But it's so much more fulfilling and so much more worthwhile to get to meet new people and get to share in our, our shared experience as people on Earth, and get to learn are totally different and unique perspectives on life. And you have so much wisdom to offer. I'm sure I have a couple of stories here and there that might be worth you hearing. And you, just like you and your mentee, while you used to teach her everything, while you used to go take her shopping and set her up for success, now here she is, a big shot. She gets to teach you a couple things too. And it's you stepping out of your bubble as an employee, as a mom, and deciding to tap other people and create that ripple effect. That's what life is about. It's not about huddling up and being to yourself all the time.
Yeah, because we are social beings and we need one another. And when the mentee becomes the mentor, you've done your job.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing about what you're doing, it takes a lot of courage to stand up as a comedian and attempt to make people laugh. Because I equate it to being like when you get up to facilitate a course or when you get up to do a presentation, you're carrying that weight of the crowd.
Right. And
it's hard when people aren't really empathizing with you and trying to give you some laughter.
You have to captivate them. It's your responsibility. All eyes are on you, and it's your job to keep them interested and to make sure they walk away from it having learned something or feeling differently than when they walked in, for hopefully for a positive reason.
I think that the comedians, in my opinion, what you all do is a service. I see it as a service. Like, I love to laugh. laughter is like a medicine.
Uh-huh.
And it is not easy to be up there, as we stated, to get other people to laugh, but you're also dealing with life yourself.
Yeah.
So you put that on the side,
Right.
and then you come out and you give to others through the gift of comedy. And you just never know. Like, I remember when my mom was dying,
Mm-hmm.
I follow different comedians, and one of them is I forget his last name, but first name I'm gonna mess it up. Neum. He is connected to Kevin Hart, and he's one of the guys in the red plastic cup gang or whatever they call themselves. He's now
Okay.
on BET on some shows, but his page, he used to crack me up. I used to laugh so hard, but I was going through a really tough time, and I messaged him to tell him and thank him, and he responded.
Yeah.
And he thanked me for letting him know that
Oh.
his comedy was helping me to heal. So you're doing a great work. And to your point, when you don't step out of your comfort zone, then you're not growing.
Yes.
And if you're not growing, you're not glowing.
You're not glowing. And in fact, a lot of that will build bitterness, resentment, regret, or that big word that we talked about earlier. It'll build all of those negative emotions because you really are well and truly missing out on everything that's possible for you. And it's unfortunate that some people will have kids and some people will have pets or greater responsibilities that they think they need to put their life on hold for, instead of continuing to advocate for themselves and continuing to foster and nurture their own personal, professional growth. You know,
they'll say, "I'll wait till they go to high school. I'll wait till they graduate, go to college." Well, all we really have
is right now.
Is right now.
It's right now.
That's all we have.
Yes,
is right now. So we have to live in them. I say, move through the moments. Move through the moments, because that's all I got is that moment.
I wonder, is there anything that you wish you had started sooner? And is there anything that you still want to do, check off your bucket list, so to speak?
Yeah. I wish I have had the confidence that I have now sooner, because I would, like, the world would know Rhoda Banks. Like, if I had,
well, they're starting to find her. I mean, you're a big shot. You're, you know.
If I had the confidence I have now, I would be on stages doing motivational speaking. I would be in stage plays. I love theater.
Oh, okay.
I believe that it's so fun to even just imagine being part of a production. And I used to be very shy and have a fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
Now I live for it, and it fills my cup and it gives me all this energy.
How funny is that? Does that freak you out when because you are the only person who can really look back and say, like, you look at a picture or something in a photo album and you're like, who was that I was so, and it almost takes you back there to when you get clammy and you know, you're shaking or, you know, whatever it is for you in your body, you start to feel that again. But it's a total departure from where you're at now, where I'm sure, like you said, it like breathes life into you to get out on stage and do your thing. You're comfortable now. You can stretch out and people love to see you do it. Yes. Yeah.
I say, that's my jam. That's my jam. Oh, y'all want me to speak? Okay. You will give me a microphone?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you ever done a play or done anything on stage like that, like rehearsed?
The closest to a play, when I worked in healthcare, I worked for a large healthcare system. They have 42,000 employees. And so they had about 2,000 leaders. And every year they would do a leadership conference. I was tricked into doing a production. I thought it was going to be a bunch of us, but it ended up just being me and one of the physicians. And he rewrote all these songs about our company to the songs from the play Cats.
Okay.
So we got to perform that. I did a solo Somewhere Over the Rainbow at that production. It was a huge success. And I was so nervous to do it. And up until like 30 minutes before the show, I was so nervous. And then I told myself, you know what? I'm just going to have fun.
Yes.
I'm just going to go out there and have fun. And if I mess up, won't nobody know, because they don't even know what we're supposed to be saying.
Right.
And so that's what I did. I had fun with it. And it became like this big thing at that organization. And I did the That's What She Said in front of 600 people at the Sheldon Hall, which is a historic hall here in St. Louis. It was That's What She Said is a storytelling platform founded by two women in Champaign, Illinois, and they had never done it outside of Champaign, Illinois, so they gave the rights to a producer here in St. Louis, and she did it here in St. Louis. That's What She Said, and I was part of the first alumni class who did a storytelling event here in St. Louis. And so that was kind of fun. We got to rehearse and be on stage, and then they liked my story so much that they invited me to their podcast. So for every year, they feature one cast member on their podcast. So I was interviewed on their podcast. So that was fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah. If you go to YouTube and you search Rhoda Banks, That's What She Said, you can see my talk, listen to it. And that's the closest I've been. Now, I went to several shows in New York to see different shows on Broadway, and I went to see Sister Act 2, and I was like in the front row, and they were singing a solo, and I was singing it with them, and I went too fast and finished it, and it was real quiet, and everybody heard it, and the guy that was on stage looked at me, and he started laughing. He was like, "You doing my line?" I was like, "Yeah." I was at a conference in Vegas, and I met Magic Johnson. He was the keynote speaker.
Oh, wow.
And he was walking through the audience, and he walked past where I was sitting, and I had on this all red. And one of my coworkers said, "Rhoda, there he is." I said, "Oh," I forget what I said. I said, "What?" And he heard me, and he stopped, and he said, "What'd you say?" I said, "What?" And he said, "Somebody take our picture. She looks so pretty in all this red." So they took our picture. And then he said, "You look too pretty to sit in the audience. You need to come on stage with me." So he took me on stage with him, set me up there the whole time he did his keynote. And at the end, he said, "I'm going to let Rhoda ask me a question," because he had asked me my name. And I asked him a question. I said, "You've accomplished a lot in your life. What's the one thing you're most proud of?" And he said, putting underprivileged kids through school. And he also said, marrying Cookie. And then he ended his talk, and the lights went out. And then he gave me a hug. And I said, "Guess what?" He said, "What?" I said, "I get to meet you again," because I was one of 25 that was going to get to meet him backstage. So the company who had got me on that list, they thought him pulling me up there was part of the whole experience. I was like, no, he randomly selected me out of the audience. So when I got back there and he saw me in line to come and take another picture with him, he said, "There go my lady in red." And I intentionally wore red because I said he's going to remember me as the lady in red. The power of manifestation is real. Yes. So my manifestation is that the world is going to know who Rhoda Banks is. I'm going to make a great impact in the world, one that's going to help others to turn out generational barriers, to change the narrative of their story, to have resilience, to reach their full level of success. That's what I'm going to be known for. And if the world don't know it, those that experience me will, and I would have done the work that was meant for me to do.
That's incredible. That's really cool. You've just lived a full life and had so many positive exchanges and just one of a kind interactions, moments. I mean, like you must feel good about a lot. There's not a lot to complain about, but even on days that, like you were saying, that are tough, you still put on that face, you still put your best foot forward, and present yourself and continue to manifest all of this goodness that's happening. That's all part of it. We're at about an hour here, give or take, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I did have some of these questions just curious, do you have anybody in particular who's been a mentor to you that's helped get you to where you are that you would spotlight?
Yeah, I wish it was just one person, but it's several. From the moment I can think back to when I worked as a customer service rep, I used to let the girls bully me in the office, and I would be crying because they were jealous because I was a high performer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the leaders pulled me to the side, and she said, "You have the potential to make a lot of money one day." And I believed her. And so she was a mentor. She's passed on. And then I met Janet Treadwell, who I've been trying to find. I don't know if she's still living, but she had moved to Lubbock, Texas. She was a leader of mine that said, "Rhoda, you had a potential to be an executive. You can make a lot of money." I said, "This is the second person said that." She said, "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" And I was like, you know what? I hadn't, because I was just busy trying to survive. So she encouraged me to go back to get my bachelor's degree, and she paid for my first set of books for my first class in college. So she was a mentor. I met John Kimmerly, who gave me an opportunity, didn't know me from Adam, and took a risk because he had a bad experience with a leader he had hired to oversee that training program I told you about. And he was at risk if it didn't go well. And he hired me not knowing anything about me. It was between me and somebody else that a lot of people had referred.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was curious to see what it looked like to do how I described that I work. He said I used the word partnership a lot. And he had never heard that, and he wanted to see what partnering looked like. And he was so glad he hired me. It was such a successful program. They got a lot of accolades for the work me and my team had done. He's still a friend, and he was once my boss. We're still friends and connected. He was a mentor. Through him, I met Dick Chamberlain, who is really the one who helped me realize you are more than your job. And we would talk about work a lot, and he would say, "What else, Rhoda? What else you got going on?" And he's a man that lived out loud. He's retired military, so he had 2 careers. Then he worked in healthcare. He's retired. He's 79. He flies he flies his own plane, a private plane. Okay. He rides motorcycles. He goes deep sea diving on Honduras every year. He's just an amazing person. He's a big mentor. Then I have Don Eggleston, who I also met in healthcare, who's very mission-driven, just a very positive force in my life. He's committed to helping underprivileged people who come out of the prison system and help them get their GED. These are just a few of the rich people I've experienced. Deborah Watson, who inspired me and encouraged me to believe in myself. And I used to have a habit of calling myself ugly. And she used to hear me, and she said, "Don't say that about yourself. You're beautiful. Pour into me." It's so many people that I'm probably forgetting many, but those are just a few. And it wasn't like big, long year relationships. Some of them are, but they were like moments of that people come in your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And a lot of these mentors and people poured into me were seasoned people. And Kathy Connolly, she was like, "Rhoda, I'll never forget this." She said, "My word of advice to you is don't push the river. Let the river flow naturally. Don't push against the way things need to go organically." And I always remember her for that. So, yeah, I've had lots of people pour into me, lots of people speak into me, and I'll just say that words matter and kindness matters. You never know what someone is going through. You could say one thing that could change their life for good or for bad.
That's right.
So if we remember that, the world will be a better place.
Absolutely. There's people, especially online, people are so quick to just say the most heinous stuff imaginable that they would just never say to you in person, Right, and you know, how much better would the world be if that was all positive? If some of the most extreme stuff being said was, you look beautiful today. You look, better than I've ever seen anyone ever look. It's usually the polar opposite of what you get online. But
If you see my comments online, I'm going to be that light that's out there trying to be in all the noise and all the darkness. I'm trying to set a positive example.
Oh, good. Yeah, and that's a lot that you want to talk about a river. That's an uphill battle. That's a waterfall of negativity. But no small comment or effort is too small. In the constant battle against negativity and self-doubt. Yeah. And again, I'll keep saying it. You're a force of nature. And people like you're the ones on the front lines that we all rally behind. You're the ones setting the awesome example for everybody. And it's a privilege to talk to you. I do want to just can I ask, is this the last time you're going to come on my humble show, or do we have another opportunity?
No, I hope that you will have me back as many times as we feel right to do so. Happy to do so. And also, as I told you, I love comedians. So I'll have to be on with one of your comedians because I love to laugh.
Yes.
So no, please have me back whenever it's right. And hey, I have a podcast called Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company. I'm always it's predominantly women in leadership, but I'm always looking for allies. So I call the men are allies of women. So anyone that's interested in talking about what we can do to elevate one another. I heard someone today say it's our job to send an elevator back down to pull others up. I love that analogy.
Yes.
And that's what the Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda Company is about. My target, if you ask me, Rhoda, who's your target audience? I really want to pour into emerging leaders, people who aspire to be leaders, younger leaders, early in their career leaders. They don't have to wait to make the mistakes that we made. They can learn from our experiences and our wisdom. And that's what this conversation is about.
And that is so selfless of you to take that charge. In writing your book, like you said, you feel naked, you feel so exposed in talking about your mistakes, but no one else is going to learn from them until you lay them out. That's why your parents and other people's parents effed them up so bad, is because they were afraid to show their behind and to show themselves exposed, vulnerable, wounded, and it did not set anybody up for success by doing that.
It doesn't.
But
when we don't acknowledge and talk about these things, we repeat them.
Yes, and it's. I keep using the same word here, but it is truly remarkable to see how many people embrace that side, that willingness to educate and to uplift versus denigrating and chipping at people. Like the subtle, snide remarks, like the person you were mentoring would talk about on the phone. It's so cool to see like a massive force fighting against that type of unproductive behavior. As far as your podcast goes, I've listened to the three most recent episodes. I listened to the one with Candace Evans today, actually on the way over, but I listened to these two as well. I mean, really, my sort of summary of how it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like just like a crash course in development, career development, mental development, a lot of grounding exercises, what you can do in the moment to succeed at any given moment,
Yeah, well said.
So, and that's all useful information. It doesn't matter who it's coming from, how qualified or unqualified, because like you said, you're taking from your lived experience tools that you applied to yourself and that your guests applied to themselves in their various career fields, and throw everything at the wall, so to speak. Whatever sticks for you is what you can use and what you can decide to use. So this is sorry, not to cut you off. I feel like this is the coolest, one of the coolest ways to mentor people because I asked you earlier about when do you step away. I mean, really,
Right.
you don't even have to really interact with anybody to do this. This is you putting it all out there for, you
Right.
know, hours on end and letting people take the initiative. They're having to meet you halfway already. So you know when they're
Yes.
listening, you know when they're engaging, they have the will that you said, and then, you know, it's totally up to them when they cross its path or when they read your book or whatever it is, the stuff you put out there, then they get to take the knowledge and apply it and use that skill and develop that skill.
So true. It's like it's self-directed learning available at your fingertips.
Yes. So it's an incredible resource. I do implore everybody check it out. Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company on Spotify. Here you're on Apple Podcasts as well. That's where I listen to it.
Yeah. We're dropping an episode a week. I've recorded many, so there's some really neat ones coming up. Heather Younger, who is a TED Talk. She has a TED Talk and a 5-time author who really focuses and specializes on human-centric leadership, leading with kindness. She's a powerhouse. You talking about imposter syndrome. I was so impressed she said yes when I asked would she come on the show. I have Orlando Walker, who is actually the artist that designed the cover of my book. Brought him on, and he's done a lot of art and book covers for women authors. So coming up, and I have more that will be dropping soon.
Well, that's amazing. I love it. And we'll have every link that you want to put out. We'll have that into the description of all of the platforms we put this on. So we'll get everything out there. But once again, please go buy the book. Everybody, go buy Daughter of an Assassin, Turning Pain into Power, A Journey of Faith and Perseverance. Please go buy that. Look at that guy's name right there. I only just learned off camera that Joe Buccino was one of the main editors of your book, which it does shock me. I'm very impressed to learn that he's able to, I guess, edit in the voice of such a strong, powerful Black woman. You know, that's rare. So I
mean, he did after he edited, I reread the book and it made me cry.
Yeah.
And so
you do a double take. You're like, have you been a Black woman this whole time, Joe?
Right. But maybe we had a soul contract from a life before. Yeah.
Maybe. No, he's a really, really outstanding guy. I'm going to have him on again, actually, in a week. Okay. So I will talk to him about this. I'm sure he'll see the episode. Yeah. He'll promote it. But that's delightful that he's able to help you in this way, and that you guys have such a tight relationship like that. That's really cool. Also, everybody, your website, Rhoda, is www.therhodaexperience.com. I'll pull that up here for everybody to see. Please visit the website to get all the info on where they can find you. There's the That's What She Said episode. Is it an episode, or how would you call that?
It's about a 10-minute talk. And you can find it on YouTube. Yeah.
I love these photos. I love the color coordination. As a gay man, I love color coordination. I love when you look nice. I mean, even now you have all the glasses and the matching. You know, I just did black t-shirt because black headphones, but you know, you're going above and beyond.
I love color. Yeah. Yeah.
It's delightful. Please go to the website, get all the details you need on where to find Rhoda, check her out. And I think that's everything and Instagram too, I had pulled up just in case. Yeah. I know that's where a lot of people live right now, is on social media. So please go to Rhoda.Banks, one word, at Rhoda.Banks on Instagram. Go give her a follow. Come show support for an outstanding Black author in our time. You know, we need more and more representatives of the community. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know that I'm Black. I feel like I have to lead with that a lot of times. Right. You know, Black and white. I ended up Mexican somehow. I'm not sure how that worked out, but I really do have an appreciation for strong, powerful Black leaders, and
Yeah.
anything I can do, even in some small part, to lift you up and get you on get as many eyeballs on you as possible, I'm happy to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yep, I'm building a brand. So I'm looking for people to come on this journey with me.
Yes, well, I just gave you a follow. I'm not sure what I'm signed in on here, but you got a follow from something just now.
Thank you. You just having me on your platform, I really appreciate that, and I've enjoyed our conversation.
Of course. And before we wrap here, usually when Lorenzo's here, we talk about a bunch of goofy stuff, like we'll watch like a body cam video, or we'll watch somebody slip and fall like AFV or something. But we had a lot of deep conversation here. Usually Lorenzo would give the audience some advice about anything that we talked about during the episode. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to just give us some tips, some life hacks and advice on anything we might or might not have talked about here. So
yeah, the biggest advice I would love to give people who are watching this or who will watch it is, remember I said that your chances of being born are 1 in a trillion.
Yeah.
And so if you're here, that means you have a purpose.
Right.
I would love if people would do the self-reflection to figure out what is that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, well, Rhoda, tell me more. How can I tell what my purpose is? It is the things that come natural for you. It's the things that people reach out to you for over and over again. And you kind of like take it for granted because it's so easy. It comes so natural. That's usually your gift.
Yeah.
And figure out what that gift can do for the world to make the world better. And you can even elevate it and figure out how to monetize that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you
That's that other trick, right? That's the keyhole we're all looking for and trying to unlock.
How to monetize. That way you're doing what your purpose is meant to do, while also meeting a natural need, which is we need money to eat and live.
That's right.
Because you're walking in your purpose, and when you're fully walking in your purpose and living in your purpose, you're free. I think it's the key to freedom and life. Like just going about the day-to-day routine, 9 to 5. Yeah, that's a means to an end.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be the only thing we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wish, that's my biggest advice. Had someone told me that 20 years ago, I think my life would look totally different.
Do you have any advice for people who have an idea of what they're good at, but they don't know where to start or how to find a way in? Do you have any advice on how to break into something new?
Yeah. So I'll say 2 things. One is having a coach, a life coach. I'm not just saying it because I am a coach.
There we go. Well, let me pull up the website. Let me get the website back.
It doesn't have to be me. But having a coach is very powerful, even if it's just for a short period. They don't give you the answers. The answers are within you. And they help you, coaches help you identify what's the right path for you. So if you haven't had that experience, I highly recommend it. Alongside that coach is having a mentor.
Right.
So somebody that could be a thought partner with you, brainstorm with you, troubleshoot with you.
Yeah.
They would give you ideas that you haven't even thought about, connect you with people that maybe you don't have access to.
Right.
When you talk about trying to break into something, it's all about networking.
Yeah.
And getting to people that know people and that are willing to open doors for you.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't do that in a silo. You can't do it if you're not willing to put yourself out there. You can't do it if you aren't willing to be vulnerable and transparent and real and honest and authentic. It won't happen. But if you're willing, like you just did, you talked about, Christian, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. When you're putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations, that's when you know you're growing.
Right.
And eventually that's going to lead to something. So that's my advice. It takes connecting with other people.
And like you said, we're social animals. We need connection. Not only do we need it to, progress, but we just need it full stop. We need to be talking to people. And once you do that, you start to get new ideas. You start to learn from one another. It sounds like, you don't even necessarily need to, break the bank and pay somebody to put you on a path. You just need a second set of eyes, whoever that is. Look for a positive influence. Look for somebody that you admire. And if they take a liking to you, if you can foster a relationship, use that and open up to that person. That doesn't mean you have to spill your guts to everybody that you meet. You don't need to wear your heart on your sleeve, but it's good to make an effort to, start a conversation with somebody that you might not have had the courage to speak to before. Definitely.
Yeah. I've talked to lots of strangers through LinkedIn. People reach out to me all the time, and I have informational interviews with people, or I always advise set up some informational interviews. If you know you want to get in a certain industry, find people who are in that industry, ask them, do they have 5-10 minutes to talk to you? Because they're the ones that have the connections and they have the insight.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, all of this has been invaluable, but the advice is perfect. I think people are really genuinely going to love this episode. It's been a delightful change of pace because, again, we usually just have comedians on here making dumb jokes and silly remarks for watching dumb videos on Instagram and reacting. So it's always nice to have like a real person on the show for once. You know what I mean? Like, so somebody who's really making a positive change.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Anytime. You're welcome anytime. Rhoda Banks, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all that, and we will see you on the next episode, y'all.